The first ugly thing Ethan said on the day of their mother's funeral wasn't, "I miss her." It was, "Do we know how fast David can finalize probate?" He said it quietly, but not quietly enough. Caleb heard it from 3 pews behind him, while rain crawled down the church windows in slow gray lines. For a second, he genuinely thought he imagined it. His mother's coffin sat 20 feet away, surrounded by white lilies, and his older brother was already talking about paperwork. Marcus answered without even looking guilty. "Depends how complicated the assets are." Assets. Not Mom. Not Eleanor. Not the woman who spent 11 months dying slowly while pretending she wasn't scared because she knew her sons were already falling apart in different ways. Assets. Caleb stared at the back of their heads in disbelief, then immediately hated himself for not being surprised. That was the worst part. Nothing about this shocked him anymore. The church smelled like wet coats, old wood, and roses beginning to die under hot lights. People whispered condolences around him in soft, rehearsed voices. "She was such a beautiful woman. She loved you boys so much." She talked about Caleb constantly. That last one hurt most, because it was true. Eleanor Whitmore loved all 3 of her sons, but Caleb always understood her differently. Ethan inherited their father's ambition. Marcus inherited his charm. Caleb inherited the dangerous thing, her ability to notice what people were hiding when they thought nobody was paying attention. And lately, before she died, Eleanor had been hiding something. Caleb realized that weeks ago in the hospital. Little things at first. The way she stopped certain conversations when Ethan entered the room. The way Marcus suddenly volunteered to help manage paperwork. The way she once grabbed Caleb's wrist during a morphine-heavy night and whispered, "Don't trust people just because they share your blood." At the time, he thought the medication was confusing her. Now he wasn't so sure. The funeral dragged like a bad dream. Organ music, rain, wet umbrellas, forced hugs from people Caleb barely remembered. His brothers stood near the front, greeting investors and business partners more warmly than grieving relatives. At one point, Caleb watched Ethan laugh quietly at something a man in a navy suit said beside the coffin. Laugh. Caleb nearly walked out right there. Instead, he stayed because his mother hated public scenes. "Dignity matters," she used to say. Funny thing was, dying stripped dignity away piece by piece anyway. Cancer did not care about dignity. It reduced Eleanor Whitmore, elegant Eleanor with perfect posture and impossible emotional intelligence, into hospital gowns and trembling fingers and quiet vomiting at 3 a.m. Caleb remembered helping her drink water near the end. She looked embarrassed afterward. Embarrassed. Like she had inconvenienced him by being unable to hold the glass steadily. That memory suddenly hit him so hard during the funeral that he had to look down at the floor for a second because grief moved strangely sometimes. Quiet for hours, then suddenly unbearable over something tiny. After the burial, everybody drove back to the lake house. The Whitmore estate sat above Blackwater Lake like something old money tried to keep hidden from the world. Massive windows, stone walls, private dock disappearing into dark water below. Caleb hated this house as a teenager. Too quiet, too expensive, too emotionally cold after their father died. Their mother stayed anyway, because she said memories deserved loyalty too. Inside, people wandered around balancing wine glasses and fake sympathy while thunder rolled outside. Marcus loosened his tie immediately. "Christ," he muttered. "That priest talked forever." Caleb stared at him. "You serious?" "What?" Marcus snapped defensively. "I'm exhausted." Ethan stepped between them before the tension escalated. "Can we not do this today?" Caleb almost laughed. "Today? As if there was a better day for realizing your brothers became emotionally hollow." David Klein arrived around 6, carrying a leather briefcase against his chest to protect it from the rain. The family attorney looked older than Caleb remembered. Nervous, too. That stood out immediately. David had known their mother for 30 years. Calm man. Careful. Almost impossible to shake emotionally. Tonight, his hands trembled slightly. Interesting. Very interesting. "We should probably begin," David said quietly. Nobody argued. The will reading took place in the formal dining room beneath a chandelier Caleb always thought looked vaguely haunted at night. Rain hammered the windows harder now. The lake outside had disappeared into darkness completely. Marcus poured himself whiskey before sitting down. Ethan opened his phone briefly. Caleb noticed. Even tonight, even now, notifications mattered more than grief. David unfolded the paperwork slowly. Eleanor Whitmore revised her will approximately 3 months prior to her passing. Marcus nodded once, like he expected that. To Ethan Whitmore, 40% ownership of Whitmore Capital Holdings. Ethan barely reacted. Expected. To Marcus Whitmore, 40% ownership of Whitmore Capital Holdings. Marcus leaned back calmly. Also expected. Caleb looked down at the table. There it was. The familiar old feeling again. Not jealousy exactly. Something sadder. The realization that everybody in this family always knew where he ranked in relation to the empire. Ethan was the successor. Marcus was the operator. Caleb was the emotional inconvenience who left finance school to teach literature because staring at spreadsheets made him want to die. Their father never forgave him for that. Maybe part of Caleb never forgave himself either. David cleared his throat awkwardly. To Caleb Whitmore. Silence settled strangely around the table. David looked uncomfortable now. Very uncomfortable. Your mother requested that you receive her personal wristwatch. Marcus blinked once. That's it? David nodded slowly. A silver Westfield watch, currently appraised at approximately $12. Silence. Then Marcus actually laughed. Not cruelly at first, just genuine disbelief. You're kidding. Nobody answered. Ethan frowned harder now. Wait, what? David looked miserable. Additionally, Eleanor specifically requested the watch remain solely in Caleb's possession and not enter asset evaluation. Marcus leaned back, staring at the ceiling. This is insane. Caleb stayed completely still, Not because of the money. Honestly, he never cared much about Whitmore Capital. The company consumed his father's entire personality long before it made them rich. No. What bothered Caleb was something else. His mother would never do something meaningless. Ever. Especially not at the end. Eleanor Whitmore planned everything carefully. Even birthday cards felt emotionally calculated in the best possible way. So why leave him a cheap watch? Unless the watch wasn't the point. David slid a small velvet box across the table. There was also a note. Caleb looked up sharply. What note? David handed him a folded piece of paper. Only 6 words were written inside. Look inside before they leave. Every molecule of air changed instantly. Caleb slowly looked up. Ethan noticed his expression first. What? Marcus reached for his drink again. What does it say? Caleb ignored them. Instead, he opened the velvet box carefully. The watch looked exactly the same. Small silver face, scratched glass, old leather straps. Cheap enough that their father used to mock it constantly. You could buy something beautiful, he'd tell Eleanor. She always answered the same way. I already have something beautiful. Then she'd look at her children. Caleb suddenly felt sick. He picked the watch up slowly. Cold metal pressed against his fingers. Then his eyes narrowed. The weight felt wrong. Tiny difference. Almost impossible to notice unless you'd held it before. Caleb turned the watch over carefully. A faint line ran along the back casing. Marcus sighed dramatically. Oh my God, Caleb. But Ethan leaned forward suddenly. No, wait. He saw it too. Caleb grabbed a butter knife from beside the bread plate and carefully slid the edge beneath the casing. Click. The back opened. Marcus sat upright instantly. Inside the watch wasn't machinery. It was hollow. And hidden inside sat something wrapped tightly in plastic. A tiny digital voice recorder. Nobody moved. Then Ethan whispered, No. Not confusion. Fear. Real fear. Caleb looked at him immediately. Interesting. Very interesting. What the hell's that? Marcus asked too quickly. Caleb removed the recorder carefully. His pulse had started hammering now. Their mother hid this intentionally, which meant she expected something, or someone. Play it, David said quietly. Marcus stood instantly. No. Everybody turned toward him. Marcus froze, slightly realizing how suspicious that sounded. I just mean, maybe we should wait. Why? Caleb asked softly. Marcus opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Ethan rubbed his jaw hard. The room suddenly felt smaller. Rain hammered the windows violently now. Caleb pressed play. Static crackled softly through the speaker. Then Eleanor's voice filled the dining room. Weak, tired, but unmistakably her. If you're hearing this, Caleb physically stopped breathing. Then your brothers are probably pretending to be confused right now. Marcus went pale instantly. Ethan closed his eyes. Not surprised, not confused, caught. Caleb saw it immediately. Every nerve in his body lit up. Hi, sweetheart, Eleanor continued softly. Jesus Christ. Hearing a dead parent's voice unexpectedly feels wrong on a biological level. Like reality briefly tears open. Caleb gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles hurt. I know you probably feel hurt right now, Eleanor said gently. And maybe embarrassed, too. Your brother's receiving the company, you receiving my old watch. Caleb looked down. Because, yes, part of him had felt that. Not greed. Something smaller. More humiliating. The old childhood fear that maybe he mattered less. Then Eleanor continued. But Caleb, I need you to understand something carefully. Silence swallowed the room. The watch was the only thing I could safely leave you without putting you in danger. Marcus stood abruptly. Turn it off. Caleb looked up slowly. What? Marcus pointed at the recorder. Mom was heavily medicated near the end. Ethan stared at the table. Didn't defend him. Interesting again. Eleanor coughed softly on the recording. Your brothers have been stealing from this family for years. David whispered. Jesus. Marcus exploded instantly. That's bullshit. But his voice cracked halfway through. Caleb noticed. So did Ethan. And suddenly Ethan looked furious. Not at Caleb, at Marcus. Very small shift. Very important. I discovered irregular transfers after your father's accountant contacted me privately, Eleanor continued. At first, I hoped there was an explanation. Caleb slowly looked between his brothers now. Ethan looked cold, controlled, dangerous. Marcus looked panicked. Completely different energies. There it was, finally. Contrast. Marcus was emotional chaos. Ethan was calculation. I confronted Ethan first, Eleanor said. Marcus snapped his head toward Ethan instantly. What? Ethan went still. Very still. Interesting. You told me you handled it, Marcus whispered. Ethan ignored him completely. Oh. Oh, this was getting worse. Much worse. Eleanor inhaled shakily through the recorder. Ethan convinced me he would quietly repair the missing accounts before authorities noticed. Caleb stared directly at his brother. You stole from Mom? Ethan finally looked up. No. That recording says otherwise. Ethan's jaw tightened. She misunderstood. Marcus laughed suddenly. A broken, nervous sound. Misunderstood? He looked at Ethan in disbelief now. Are you serious right now? Ethan snapped instantly. Shut up, Marcus. And there it was. Fear. Not grief, not sadness. Fear. Real fear. Caleb's stomach slowly tightened. Their mother hadn't left him a sentimental goodbye. She left evidence. Eleanor's voice softened again. Caleb, if Ethan starts trying to control the conversation after this point, you need to pay attention very carefully. Nobody moved. Ethan's face lost color. Completely. Then Eleanor said the sentence that shattered the room entirely. Your father did not die accidentally. Silence. Not normal silence. The kind that physically changes oxygen inside a room. Marcus sat down slowly, like his legs stopped working. David removed his glasses. Caleb stared at the recorder. His father drowned during a boating accident 16 years earlier. That story shaped their entire family afterward. Ethan took over Whitmore Capital at 26. Marcus spiraled into gambling and debt for years. Their mother emotionally disappeared for almost a decade. And Caleb? Caleb spent years believing his father died, disappointed in him. Eleanor continued quietly. 2 nights before his death, your father discovered missing funds tied to internal company accounts. Marcus whispered, "Oh my God." Not performative. Real. Ethan looked at him sharply. "Stop talking." "You told me he never knew," Marcus said weakly. Caleb's head turned instantly. "What?" Marcus realized too late what he just admitted. Ethan stood violently. "Marcus." But Marcus looked genuinely shaken now. "You said Dad never found out." Caleb felt cold spreading through his chest. Not anger yet. Something worse. The horrible realization that his family had been rotting underneath him for years while he kept trying to remember them as human. Eleanor's voice cracked slightly now. "I don't know exactly what happened on that boat." Interesting. Not, "they killed him." Just, something happened. Layered. Careful. Human. "But I know your father called me terrified the night before he died." Caleb's breathing slowed. "He said if anything happened to him, I should never trust the company again." Rain slammed violently against the windows. The lake outside looked endless and black beneath the storm. Eleanor continued softer now. "And Caleb, there's one more thing I never told you." His throat tightened immediately. "When you were 19, your father changed his will privately." Ethan shut his eyes again. Marcus looked confused now. "What?" Eleanor inhaled shakily. "He left Whitmore Capital to you."